So thank you so much for having me, inviting me into your classroom today. It's such a great opportunity for me because I don't get to talk to young people your age very often, and you are our future and you're so important. And so I am so happy to be here. You've all had a chance to look at our website a little bit, but I'll tell you just a bit about Barnstable Land Trust, just to start out. So we are what's called a nonprofit organization, which is called a nonprofit because it's different from other for-profit organizations, like your typical business, your store, has a mission to do something like serve ice cream, but also to make a profit, to make money. And our organization as a nonprofit just has one mission, and that is to protect open space in the town of Barnstable. So that's what makes us different. And there's lots of other nonprofit organizations like us out there, the YMCA, the YWCA, lots and lots of great organizations who are just trying to do something good for the community. And so that's what we do. And we work mostly just in the town of Barnstable. And all of the land that we protect is protected forever. So maybe just for a minute, each of you could think about your favorite place in your neighborhood or in the town or on Cape Cod. Just think about what that place is. And maybe we'll have a chance to talk about those places a little bit during this conversation. And I can tell you whether they're protected forever, meaning your kids, I know you can't think about that possibility right now, but one day you may have kids and your kids will have kids, and for the lands that we have protected, they're going to be around forever, for generations. So I think I'll move along here and talk about a little bit about why we protect open space. And I'll talk about each of these things a little bit, and maybe you can think of why you think it's important as well. So one thing that people don't realize is that when we leave land open, meaning we don't pave it over for a road or a building or a store, when we leave it open as fields or woodlands or marshes, it really helps protect our drinking water. And on Cape Cod, all of the water that we drink comes from this underground puddle called an aquifer. And so everything above that is protecting that water underground. So all of our ground is like a giant sponge, and it's all, it's acting to filter, like a filter that you might have in your water pitcher at home or on your faucet. It's acting as a big strainer to protect the water underground from everything that's coming down from above. So we put salt on the roads in the winter to make it easy to drive on. But when we have a storm or a flood, everything on that road runs off. And if there's not some grass or soil or trees or marsh to protect the water underneath, it just goes right into the drinking water or into our bays and estuaries and oceans. So it's a really, really important role that open land plays. It also helps prevent floods, protect against floods, which are getting worse and worse in recent years, and provides habitat for wildlife. So all the bunnies you see, the foxes, the coyotes, the turkeys, all of our Cape Cod wildlife, the squirrels, they all need a place to live. And if we instead put houses everywhere, then they lose their house. So that's another really important reason why it's good to keep some land open. Now, this next word you may not know yet, it's carbon sequestration. It's the same as carbon storage. And carbon is the chemical that is most important in global climate change, in global warming, which I'm sure you've all heard a little bit about. So that's what's making our planet warmer and making us have to adjust in many, many ways. So anything that we can do to store carbon is really helpful to protect against further global warming. So trees are really, really good at that. Marshland and wetland is really, really good at that. And if we cut down trees or disturb wetlands or marshes, then we release carbon and we make the global warming problem worse. So there's all these amazing natural attributes of our open spaces that we may not think about, but they're so, so important. And then, of course, maybe the most important to you at your age, but really important to me too, is the opportunity for recreation. I love to walk on the trails. I like to mountain bike. I like to walk on fields. I like to go bird watching. I live in Cape Cod because it's such a beautiful place to be. And there's so many wonderful places to walk and hike and play. And it turns out that it's really good for us, both physically and also sort of good for our brains, our mental health, to spend time outside. And that's another really, really important reason for us to keep spaces open, to keep parks, to keep trails and woodlands for all of us. And then another thing that we don't think about that often sometimes is what's the impact on our economy and our way of life, how we make money to live if we let our water deteriorate, if we lose our open spaces. And it turns out that aquaculture, fishing and shellfishing, are an enormous part of our economy. It's how many of us make our living on Cape Cod. And if we let the water deteriorate, we're going to lose that. We know that another really important part of what makes us function as a town is that people come here on vacation. And so all of our hotels and our restaurants and our boat rentals and our seasonal folks, they're all putting money into our economy, but they won't come here if it's not a beautiful place to be anymore. So it's really, really important for all of those reasons that we keep our place beautiful and open. And maybe I'll stop there, Ms. Thomas, just for a minute and see whether folks have any questions or any other thoughts about why it's important for us to keep lands open.
One of the questions that I asked the students, and I think you might talk about this in a little bit, is where they have been. According to the website, they were able to see what lands you're protecting, Barnstable Land Trust. So I think they do have some information on which ones they have been to and which ones they might like to go to in the future. So does anybody have a question about what Mrs. Milkman has said at this point? Do you have, if you're online, you can chat it, because I can't really see you very well. So if anybody has a question about anything so far. Does anybody know somebody who is working in the fishing industry or shellfishing industry? Does anybody know that they do that as a job? They're a shellfisher person or a fisher person, they go fishing? Mauricio? Okay. Okay. Yeah, all right. So Mauricio has a friend that has, his dad is a shellfisher person and fisherman, and Mauricio has been shellfishing. Jimmy? Okay, yep. So we think in social studies about how do people live in an area? How do they live? what jobs do they have? And those things have a lot to do with the environment that they live in, right? The physical geography. We talked about this earlier in the year. If you live near the ocean, you can get fish, right? We have tourism because people want to come to they want to come to see the ocean. So having open space protects groundwater. How many of you learned about groundwater before? The water cycle, where it, how many people have learned about the water cycle before? So I think they have some of that, the evaporation, condensation, precipitation, right? The water cycle. Does that sound familiar? So I think there's some base, Ms. Milkman, about what you're talking about. I just like to make that connection with them as we're going. So that's all wonderful. I don't see any questions yet.
Great,
But
great.
I will also say that in a couple of minutes, I may have to interrupt you and we may take a little break. This is the class when our children get to go outside and have like a 5-minute mask break and a snack. So we might have to do a little bit of a pause. I don't
Okay,
think Ms. Turner mentioned it, but for right now, I think we're good to keep going.
no problem.
All right, and if
Okay,
students have a question, you can put it in the chat, guys, and I can ask Ms. Milkman as we go along, okay? All right,
all right.
thank you.
So now I'm gonna show you some maps. I am in love with maps, and I hope that as you when you're in school, you're still using maps here and there. Although I know we're so reliant on GPS now, but this is a map of the town of Barnstable, and maybe you can recognize certain places. Up here, if you can see my cursor, this is Sandy Neck. This big lake here is Lake Wequacket. These are the Indian Ponds. These are the 3 bays down here. And then this is Hyannis Harbor. So this is a map that was made to show land use in 1951, which is a long time ago, before I was born, before you were born, before your parents were born, probably. This shows how we were using land back there 70 years ago. So all of the green is forest and open space. All of the yellow is houses. And the red is what we call commercial development, businesses. So this is what it looked like. And if you see this gray line across here, this is how far the Mid-Cape Highway went back then. It didn't even go all the way across Barnstable, let alone all the way across Cape Cod. So now let's fast forward to 1999, so 20 years ago. Your parents were born then, before then. And you see a big change. So I'll just go back again. See all this green? Now you see a lot of yellow and a lot more red. So what happened in that 50 years was, well, they finished the Mid-Cape Highway, so it was easier to get here. And as a result, all of this yellow, this is all houses now, where it used to be green, it's all houses, and red, all businesses. So we developed the land into housing and businesses, and all that green space went away, but we did manage to save a whole lot of green space while we were doing it. This is the West Barnstable Conservation Area. Some of you have been there. This down here, this is Eagle Pond Sanctuary, which Barnstable Land Trust owns. And then a lot of it is owned by our water districts as well. So we did manage to save a lot of open space during that time. And then now I know this map looks a little different, but what I want you to see out of this map is that you can see all of the kind of reddish brown is developed land. So it has houses and businesses on it. And all the green is open space, protected land. Also includes a golf course here and there. This is Oyster Harbors down here. And then all of this white space. So this white space, and it's about a fifth to a little less than that, a fifth of all of the land left is still up for grabs. That means it could be developed or it could be protected and saved as open space. So I show you this just to say that we have a lot of opportunity left in our town to protect more land, make more parks, protect our water supply more, and also to provide housing where we need it. So there's a lot more opportunity for all of that. So another map, this is my last map. This map shows all of the protected open space in our town. And in the blue and purple, that's Barnstable Land Trust land. And the green is town or water district land. So you can see over the years, we've protected over 11,000 acres. So over a quarter of the land area of the whole town. This town's been very great. The community has been very, very supportive of keeping it green and protecting our environment, which is great. And this is the map we use to figure out what we have to do in the future. What's the next piece of land that has to be protected? So, give you a couple of examples, and maybe this is where we can talk a little bit about places that you've been. I'll just show you a couple of our properties. This is Eagle Pond in Katuitt. Beautiful pond and beautiful walking trails. I'm hoping that some of you have been there, and if you haven't, I hope you have a chance to go there, because it's really the place we have that's has the most extensive trails. This is Fuller Farm in Marston's Mills. This is right on Route 149. It's about 22 acres of woodland and farmland, really, really beautiful. And we are going to start putting gardens on that, and it's going to be a really great place for you to visit, probably before the end of the year. And this is a place that was protected very recently. It's also in Katuitt. Some of you may have gone to watch the Kettleers play or the Harbor Hawks. So this is the Kettleers field, and the entire woods around it is now protected from development. So that was a really, really big community effort. I think we had probably over 1,500 people help support that project to support 19 acres around the ball field. So, and then this is a project that we just did this past December. This is off Plum Street in West Barnstable. And the really cool thing about this property, it's about 16 acres and it connects to lots and lots of conservation land that the town owns. But it also has this trail on it. And this trail is special because it's the only unpaved section of the original indigenous pathway, the pathway that Native Americans used to walk from town to town and across the town. And this has been around for thousands and thousands of years. So it has a wonderful history to it. It was also a cart path used by colonial settlers after that, and is still a very long walking trail. It's part of the Cape Cod Pathways Trail that runs the whole end to end in the town of Barnstable, 11 miles. So really cool property, which will be, is owned by the town now and will be open for walking. So should I stop here? Should we talk about these people's favorite places?
Yeah, that sounds like a great idea. I just want to make one point. Remember when she had the map up and it showed the Mid-Cape Highway? And it mentioned that the Mid-Cape Highway was completed. And then what happened with the land around the highway? What did you notice? People, Jimmy, what'd you notice? It was more developed. Does anybody remember back to the Amazon rainforest unit that we did? Is there anything similar that happened in the Amazon rainforest? What happened in the Amazon rainforest? What did they put in? Remember? You remember what it was called? In general, what was it? And what? Who put it in? Somebody put in something so they could get into the rainforest more easily. Who did it? The loggers. Does anybody remember the loggers? And what did they put in? A what? Did they put in what did they put in, Jimmy? They put a road in, right? The Trans-Amazonian road, right? Remember they put in the highway, and we saw how the land was developed and the trees were cut down along the highway because it was easier to get there. Does anybody remember that now that we've said it? Okay, so that was one connection that we have from our unit of study before in land use and how people get into an area. It's a lot easier when they have that roadway to get in. Okay. Has anybody here ever been to any of the properties that Ms. Milkman, or anybody online, you can chat, use the chat to tell any that you've been at before? Okay, Jimmy, you've been to one? What one? Has anybody else ever been to Eagle Pond? My husband and son and I went walking over there last spring, and they're extensive trails. I think we walked like 7 miles that day, covering all of those trails. The baseball field, the Cavaliers field, a lot of times, and the students been to a lot of the Cavaliers games. Mauricio, what about you? Eagle Pond, yeah. And Amelia has also been to some of these as well. So anywhere else that you've been? Who's been to a Cavaliers game? Yep, good. One of the students made a comment when you were showing the field and the woods around the field at the Cavaliers field that it looks like more than 19 acres. That it just, the picture makes that. So I think that their idea of what an acre is isn't, they might not have a good idea of how much land an acre covers. Is it like 40,000 square feet by 40,000 square feet? How much is it? Do you know what an acre of land is size wise?
That's such a good question, and I meant to have an answer for that.
I can
But
look it up.
here's what I know, that a typical house on Cape Cod is on about an acre. A bigger house is on maybe 2 acres. But if you're really in a community, it'll be an acre or smaller, a smaller lot. If you're in that place where houses are closer together, it'll probably be less than an acre. That kind of gives you an idea.
That's great. Yeah. It's about 43,000 square feet. So that would be, they could do the math on that later. But yeah, I think that's a better way to look at it. Houses tend to be on an acre-ish, and if you have a lot of land, it might be on 2 acres, right?
But I think your student was actually right. What this picture shows is more than 19 acres, because it shows more than the area that we protected. So very, very smart to point that out.
All right, good for you, Aiden. All right, great. I'm wondering if it's a good time for us to just take a 5-minute mask break. We might go out for 5 minutes. So we are back. One student wrote in the chat that there are some trails in her backyard, and she thinks that they are part of a protected area. I know that some neighborhoods have area that's protected, right? When they build a neighborhood, they have to give certain amounts that will be protected forever. So that's more kind of private open space.
Right. Right.
And then we have open space in town or parcels that are purchased by the town or by organizations like you or the Barnstable Land Trust.
Right. Yeah, the town has lots and lots of land that has lots and lots of trails on it. And we're in the process now of making a big trail map for the whole town, which I'll make sure you get when we finish it, so everyone can see where all the great trails are.
Okay, so we're all seated and back. Let me see. Kids online, we're back. All right, please, if you're on Zoom, you need to be back with us. We will have a little activity to do with this next week with this presentation again. So even though you've seen it once, we'll be doing a little activity with it. So if you're online and you're back, I'm just gonna do this for a second. Everybody back? Everybody back? Okay, all right, great. Let's see. All right, okay, so we're back, and if you want to continue, we have
Yep.
that. I will just give you a time. We have to stop and clean the desks by 10:40.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, great. Oh, that's more time than I thought. Okay, good.
Yeah, and if you don't, don't feel obligated.
Okay.
But thank
So
you.
that's great. I wanted to talk a little bit about conflicts on the land because I know that you talked about that and learned about what was happening in the Amazon. And just give you 3 examples of conflicts. So, and I think maybe conflict is the wrong word for this first one I'm going to talk about because we need houses, people need a place to live, but if you put a house on a piece of land, that's developing it, and that is not going to, that's going to mean the land is not open space anymore. It's kind of an obvious point. But so if you're talking about kind of threats to open space on Cape Cod and in our town, one is housing. If we keep building on green land, on open space, then we'll lose the open space. But there's an alternative to that, which is to build a little higher, build a little more densely in towns. So put more houses in a smaller area, then you can leave the green space. Another big issue, mostly off Cape, but it's starting to happen on Cape, has to do with solar farms. And this is, sounds like a funny word, solar farm, but what it means is companies that build ground-mounted solar panels are putting them on woodlands and fields all over the place. So actually, as big a threat to open space as housing is these giant solar farms. And, on the one hand, it's great to have solar energy because solar energy is so much better for global warming than, say, a coal-fired plant. But it really matters where you put those solar panels. And there are alternatives to putting them to just clear cutting forests and putting them on the ground. Another option is to take a giant parking lot like at Home Depot in Hyannis and putting solar on top of the parking lot. So you can still park the cars there, but you're taking an area that's already paved and putting solar there instead. And it's kind of an unfortunate conflict that you're pitting kind of 2 environmental issues against each other. One is, an effort to make clean energy by producing energy through solar. And, putting that against keeping our land open. But this is a good solution to that. So then the last kind of conflict I want to talk about is a conflict that Native Americans have and have had, since colonists settled here. So over the years, the one right that Native Americans have maintained, at least here in Massachusetts, is the right to fish and shellfish pretty much anywhere. So even at times of year when most people are not allowed to fish, like for example, when the herring are running. I don't know if any of you have seen the herring runs. It's really cool, happens in the spring. We have a couple of them in town, at least a couple of them. So in order to protect the herring, which are bait fish for larger fish, and also important to the whole environment and ecological system, the state doesn't allow fishing for herring, but it does allow it for the Wampanoag, who are the local Native American tribes. So the tribes can do it. And a lot of people don't understand it. So if they see someone like Marcus here, who I know because he does some walks for us, really terrific person. If he's fishing, people come up to him and say, "What are you doing? You're not allowed to do it." But he is. He is allowed to do it. So it's a really interesting thing that most people don't know. They're also allowed to hunt. If you happen to come up to someone who is who's fishing when you don't think they should be, make sure to ask that question. Do you have a right? Because chances are they do. So that's a really interesting sort of historical conflict. And the newspaper article that I have here is very recent. It's just from last May, talking about how tribal members are being harassed for doing what they have a right to do. So I think that's all I'm going to talk about in terms of conflicts. Just want to say a few more words about why it's so important, and maybe you can be thinking about this as well. These are very recent pictures of Prince Cove and Cotuit and West Bay in Osterville. This is what it looks like actually quite a lot of the summer. The water is pretty polluted. And that's just one example of, going back to my original slides about why it's important to protect land. This is from all of the runoff from lawns. A lot of people put nitrogen on their lawns to keep them green. That's probably the worst thing you could do for our water. All of our septic systems that are dealing with our waste, those are all making our waterways look like this. And there are different things we could do to stop that. Just a few thoughts about what you can do if you're interested in helping out. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on this as well. So you could get to know your favorite outdoor places. You could spend time outside, get to know what plants are there, get to know what animals live there, get to know what birds are there and what their songs are and what they're saying to each other. Tell your family and your friends how much these places mean to you. Share how you value this and why you think they're important. There's lots of cleanup opportunities, at least a couple times a year. There's Cape-wide clean sweep projects, which are really fun. Everyone gets together and picks up litter on the beaches. And then just a website that you can check out called Young Voices for the Planet, which is all about how young people your age are kind of engaging in their community to make positive change. They're very inspiring stories there. So I would encourage you, if you're interested at all, just to sort of pursue some of these things. Um, and this is just a saying, an old Native American saying, we do not inherit the land from our ancestors, we borrow it from our children. And, you know, this is what we grown-ups need to remember, that, you know, what we do to the land is going to impact you and your children and future generations. So it's our responsibility to make sure that we leave it better than we found it. And so you all have a chance to do the same. So I'll just leave you with that, and then maybe want to have a little conversation about any of those things that interest the students, or other things that you found from the website.
All right, so anybody have any questions at this point? People online, again, you can put it in the chat. If you have a question or a comment, I'll put the chat back up. And Kawan says that he has a bunch of trails in his neighborhood as well. So it looks like they're students recognizing that they have some of this open space available to them, which is wonderful. Anybody else have a question? Some of you have your sheets. You had some interesting questions on those sheets. Pardon me. How long has Barnstable Land Trust been in operation?
Yeah, we've been here since 1983, and there's about 20 other land trusts on Cape Cod. Every town has one. And we were all founded around the same time, right around the time when there was an enormous development boom happening on Cape Cod. And everyone who lived here said, oh my goodness, we want to make sure that not every square inch of our town has a house on it or a business. We want to make sure that we protect some of the reasons we came here in the first place, or we lived here. So that's when the land trust started, and that's when the town started buying land for open space.
All right, thank you. Anybody else have any other questions? You have the paper in front of you. A lot of the students were interested in the article that's on your page about the Squatchy area, the little Sasquatch area. Some of them mentioned that they live near there, or they obviously drive by there. So I don't know if you have any, like, you know, just a little anything about that, but a lot of them saw that article when they were looking at the website yesterday and made comments about that. I drive by there every day. That's on my commute home. So it's always fun to see that little sign. But
yeah, we've never seen Sasquatch, but
no.
that sign has been there for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's right by Mill Pond, right there at the corner of 149 and 28. And that pond has the most amazing ducks. So if next time you're driving by, if you have an extra couple minutes to park there and just get out and see what ducks are out there, especially in the winter, it is one of the places where there are more different kinds of ducks than anywhere else in our town. It's really cool.
We have a lot of ducks that winter over here, correct? They come from further north, and in the summer they go back north. So we're south for them, right? And there's all different kinds of ducks. I know in our walks, my husband and I walk a bit, and we see a lot of bufflehead ducks on the ponds that we travel, and they're adorable little white and black ducks, and they dive under the water, and they're really neat. Braylon wants to get back in. Okay, I'll see if I can get Braylon in. Thank you. Sometimes the kids lose their connection. All right. Any other questions, boys and girls? There's a lot of connections here, and I will definitely use this. With your permission, I'm going to share this with my other classes and with the other history teachers. I think you talked with Ms. Turner about that, but so that they can use it. And I'll add some questions to it possibly for them to answer as they go through it. But anybody else have any other questions about it? You had some good questions. No? All right. All right. Well, we so appreciate you coming to talk to us today and giving us information about this very important organization in our town. Hopefully, kids, you will be able to see these places. You might notice now when you drive by, there are signs about conservation areas. Now you know what they are. I hope you get outside and get on the land. That's really, really important for your well-being. And it's important that people understand the importance of the land so that that's preserved so that we can do all the things that we were talking about today as far as preserving our shellfishing and our waterways. And I really appreciate you being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for inviting me. This is really one of my favorite things to do, and we're happy to talk with you anytime. We'd love to have any of you come by our office. We're on 6A in West Barnstable. We're not open now, but we will be as soon as everybody's got the vaccine. And we'd really love to have you come out. And we have a beautiful trail back here that you can use anytime
Yeah.
too. So thank you so much.